Welcome to another episode of libGDX-Graph devlog. In this episode, I will show that I've added lighting, as well as I will show how to easily create a toon shader using the lighting. So this is my render pipeline here. I have the default shader, which is basically a shader that is based on more or less physical characteristics. So we have here the diffuse part, emissive, specular, shininess, and all the other good stuff. And this produces this kind of lighting on the model, where we can see here we have a directional light that's coming from the left side of the model itself. And now I'll show you how to create the toon shader. So I start off with the calculate lightning node, and this node is used to make any lightning calculations. By default, I would just be taking the color one, but because I'll be modifying, I'll be using the diffuse in specular parts only. So first of all, I need to provide the position and normal attributes from the model mesh. I could of course modify them if I wanted, but I'll just take the default values as they come from the model. And also I'll take the shininess from the model, from the material. I'll provide the default of 32, which is I found a reasonable default. So if I now connect this to here, we are seeing this calculation here. That's because we don't have albedo still, and we don't set anything else. We just have the specular dot here. So, but I'm not interested in passing the actual. Well, maybe let me pass and show you quickly. If I just specify get the diffuse texture and UV attribute and the sampler, I can basically make it provide the basic look of a 3D lighted material, 3D lighted model. But this is what I want to do here. So what I want to do in here is make a toon shader. Let's make it slightly bigger. It's going to be quite involved here. So let me start off with the diffuse lighting part of the toon shader, and for that I'll be using the diffuse part here. That's coming off in here. What I'll do, this is as a color value, so I'll take the intensity of it. I'll just let me note here quickly that there is many different ways of doing toon shader. You can just take the directional light directly, the first directional light, and go from the direction and calculate everything yourself. This calculate lighting that takes all the lights in the scene into account, but I would recommend for this kind of effect of toon shading, I would recommend just go with one directional light. But it's up to you to experiment and figure out what you want to do. So second of all, if I now multiply it by the color here of the diffuse texture. So let's pass this here. Math multiply and pass this here. I'll have only the diffuse part of the lighting that is being displayed here in the model on the preview here. So what we want to do here is create this very specific band. So to do that, we can use either step or smooth step. I prefer a smooth step because steps give you a very hard edge to the point where you are seeing like a pixel perfect one. And with a smooth step, you can make it a bit more natural. The switch from dark to light is not so abrupt. I'll provide two constants here for the first and second edge. and I will use this instead here. And the values here, I'll go for something relatively small. Yeah, so maybe 3. As you can see, the higher difference between these two values, the first and the second edge, is the wider the band produced is here. Let's go maybe with something very thin, maybe too thin. Okay. So we have the diffuse part already. As you can see, the part here, unlighted part, is black. That's because the smooth step produces 0 for any values below this. But that's because we are not taking we are only taking the diffuse part of the light, but we can use ambient light as well. So let's take ambient lighting that we have in our scene defined. We get intensity of it, and we simply add it to the result of the diffuse one. Okay, and now we can see the entirety because this is lighted by the ambient light, this is lighted by ambient light and the directional light. Let me now show a new feature that I've added, which is grouping multiple nodes. So if I keep pressing Shift, I can select multiple nodes or deselect them. First of all, while keeping Shift, I can move all of them, but I can also group them by either pressing Ctrl G or create group or Command G on Mac. So in here, I enter the group name, so let's say ambient lighting. And now I have a group here, which I can just move all together, and the group is getting adjusted automatically, the size of the box. Okay, so this is the ambient lighting. This in here. So the problem with the diffuse in here that the smooth step returns 1, which means that this is going to be completely like 100% lighted, and which would mean that if you wanted to add a specular component to this stuff, since the specular mostly going to be around the same area as the diffuse light, you're not going to be able to see the specular dot. That's why I would recommend remapping the value of the smooth step here. So let's use math value remap input, and let me remap it from 0, 1. We're gonna be remapping it to well, this is up to me. Let's go with 0.6. So from 0 to 0.6, and we'll use this instead. So we can see that this is a bit darker. The lower the value is going to be, the less impact of the diffuse light is going to be on the model. So you could extract this as a parameter if you wanted to your shader, but I showed it so many times, I'm not going to bother at the moment. So I'll mark these and group them as diffuse lighting. Okay, so let's move this part a bit. So we have ambient lighting, we have diffuse lighting. This is actual color. Let's move it to the side here. So another part is that we want to do is the specular lighting. So once again, we take the specular from here and calculate the intensity of it. The same way as we did for the diffuse lighting, we will have a smooth step for it. Let me just group this to make it look much nicer here, and also smaller. Okay, so we have intensity, we have smooth step here. It's going to be common smooth step. Once again, we will provide two constants here. Let's say it's going to be, so for smooth step, because the dot is usually much smaller, the value is going to be also much smaller here. 0, 0, 1, 0, 2. And this is for the same reason. We want to have more less abrupt change from not visible to fully visible value. And we don't have to remap it here. We could remap it if you wanted to. It's up to you pretty much. And we will add this again to the result of the other lighting. And multiply this value by here. So now if you take a look, we have a specular dot in here. So that is pretty much all we wanted to do here. This is like the most basic toon shader you can create. It's not the most efficient because you're doing a lot of the lighting calculations here. I just take the values out of this and I'm not really thinking too much. You can do much more efficient stuff, but for most cases this is going to be absolutely enough and you're not going to be making it a very complicated shader. Okay, so let's make this. Let's mark this as the color component, or base color, let's call it. I think this grouping is really useful as it allows me to make stuff into logical parts that I can come back later in a month or two, or even someone else can open this graph and okay, this is specular, this is diffuse, and they will easily know. If you want to delete it, you either right click it and remove group, or you just remove all the elements inside of the group and then the group disappears. There is no way of adding anything to the group, so you have to just delete and then create a new group together. Okay, so let's save it quickly and switch to the program. I'll reload the shader, and here I can switch between toon shading here on the model. So you can see we have the specular part here and everything is and we have normal lighting using the default way of calculating lighting. Okay, I hope you find this useful. If so, please like the video and it will let me know what content to make. I'm planning to do many more different things with this graph shader. Please also subscribe to the channel to be notified of any new videos, and thank you for watching. Bye.